What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. A tale of two weekends, two teams, two storylines maybe coming from yesterday. What a weird Sunday it was at Citizens Bank Park. I guess let's start with the good news. The good news is the Phillies sweep the Pirates as they should have. That Pirates team, my God, is just terrible. Phillies 10 games over 500 right now, playing on a 99-win pace as we talk here this afternoon, Anthony. But, of course, you know that the lead story and the most important story long-term to this team is the news surrounding Jose Alvarado. And, of course, that's where we're going to start. I'll set the table here. We all know by now that he is out for 80 games. He's been suspended. He's ineligible to play in the postseason. And certainly it is a mess, and it creates a very messy situation for this team as they navigate an already rocky bullpen. Where I want to start with you is, what is your reaction to the news just on a personal level? Are you stunned? Is he remorseful? Is he stunned? Did he know what he was doing? Like, what do we think here?
Well, it's going to be really hard to answer those last questions, Bob, because he wasn't available. Right. I mean, just wasn't available to talk. He left the team and left the area. Apparently he was pretty emotional about it.
Now, does he go home for like 2 months, or do they make him, can he be around the facility? Like, how does the logistics of it work?
No, he can't be around the facility. So yeah, he's got to go work on his own. I'm sure that they'll give him some kind of program so that once the suspension is lifted, he's not going to need to be ramped back up again before he can pitch like a lot. And I got to imagine that they'll be able to do something there right beforehand so that once the 80 games are over, he could come right back. But yeah, this is it's a killer, Bob. In so many ways, this is an awful situation for the Phillies, because not only was he your best reliever and you lose him basically for the year. Yeah, you probably can come back and appear in what? It's got there'll be 35 games left in the season or something like that.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what that might look like when he comes back, or is eligible to come back, I should say.
So what is he potentially pitching? Like 15 games when he comes back, whatever. So he's essentially gone for the season. You lose your best reliever. You lose an arm in the bullpen right now, and you don't have a replacement really ready to go to replace him. And and when you look through the system, you don't have that left-hander in the system that's going to come up and replace him. So if you have to replace a left-handed arm in the bullpen, now you have to go acquire one. And other teams aren't stupid. They know that you need this. And so, of course, the price tag is going to be a lot higher. And so, therefore, you then have to give up more to get that. So there is just and the cherry on top of the whole thing is this was the biggest weakness of the team to begin with.
Yes.
So, like, you have all of these things compounded, and in one day they get blown up even more. I don't know, Bob. I don't know how they survive this. I mean, I think that they're going to move some starting pitchers ultimately into bullpen roles.
Okay.
Ultimately, but for the time being, they're just going to cross their fingers and hope. I don't know what else they can do.
Oh, let's take a look at this. How does this actually play out? So what effectively happens here is you still have Matt Strom from the left side. Problem is that you're using him against lefties and righties. You're not really playing matchup with him. So now that means you may have to be a little bit more careful in how you deploy him. Like, hey, we could use Matt here because we just like him, and he's probably our most dependable bullpen arm at this point, but we don't really have a viable alternative against left-handers, so we may have to be a little bit more selective in how we utilize him, because now you're talking about Tanner Banks going from your third lefty to basically your only other left-handed option. And I think we've seen enough of Tanner Banks, who I think is a major league pitcher and can be out of your bullpen, but can't be a guy that you're going to consistently for key outs, even against favorable pockets of an opponent's lineup. So that's a problem. Then the other part of it becomes like, let's just talk about Jose Alvarado. I saw this and my initial reaction was like, man, don't don't bring him back in 26. Don't even worry about him for the remainder of this year. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, let's say he does come back with 35-ish games left or so, and he appears in, you said 15. Okay. I would use him in those 15 games, assuming that he's effective, just to eat up some innings, just to keep your other arms that are going to be there as part of a postseason mix more fresh. Like, there's this idea, well, you want to get everything sorted out and use your arms the way that you want to in the playoffs late in the season. And I don't think that's actually the case at all, because you typically take some of your surplus of starting pitching as September turns to October, and your bullpen looks totally different anyway. So I'm not really worried about developing, here's my 7th inning guy, here's my 8th inning guy, here's my 9th inning guy. So I still think that there's a role for Jose Alvarado, so long as he's locked in and takes care of himself upon his return date, to use him. But what do you do in the short term? The one thing that I look at now is the schedule. And I say, you're 10 games over 500. You're a half a game behind the Mets. You play an absolutely dreadful Rockies team here this week. And you are going to be a significant favorite in all 4 of these games. You better win the series. And if we're being honest, they will be favored as such. And if you look at the probable pitchers in each of the games, you will look at it and just say, like, they ought to sweep this team. And then you go out and you play the A's this weekend. I think it's a road trip, because this is going to cost them. Like, this is going to hurt them. They're going to lose games in the short term because of this situation. You have to take advantage now, full advantage of a great opportunity to really build a buffer this week on your record. So I look at it, and bare minimum, you got to go 5-2. Whereas I wouldn't ever say that on a road trip in May. I would never say, like, you've got to go 5-2 on a 7-game road trip. But I think because they are bound to struggle because of this, you have to seize the opportunities as they come. And hopefully that buys you some time to navigate how you're actually going to plug this.
Yes. All that is accurate. They're not going to do anything right away. I don't think this is a situation where it's go out and make a big move for a reliever now. It's just not. And mostly because, with only a couple exceptions, and we're talking about the worst teams in the league, everybody still kind of thinks they're in this, right? They still think they're kind of in the race. Yeah. So you really don't need to limit your options to relievers on super bad teams at the end of May or middle of May and say, well, that's where we're going to find that replacement. I think there's ways internally to kind of make this work for the next 2 months. You may not be thrilled about it. It may not always be the greatest situation. Bullpen may blow a game again or 2 games, and we're going to sit there and say, see, here we go.
It does help that Jordan Romano is now like prime Eckersley, that does help. So.
Yes. Yeah. So that's going to be the thing. But this is going to dominate conversation for us, Bob, for the next, as the police go flying by. This is going to dominate conversation for us over the course of the next 2 months leading into the trade deadline. But we're
going to be talking a month from now, Anthony, and we're going to say this team is 15 games above 500. And if they didn't blow those 4 games and Jose Alvarado was on this team, they'd be 23 games over. Like, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to have that conversation about, man, this hurt them. This really hurt them.
Yeah, no, there's no question. But I do think, and I've maintained this since the beginning of since spring training, and they're not going to say it now because there's a lot of time between May and October, and a lot of baseball to be played between May and October. But come October, it's going to be starting pitchers who are pitching out of the bullpen. It really is, and that's what you look at a guy like Abel who came up yesterday, and we'll get to that start. It was really, really a great start. I feel really good for the kid to have that, especially after the year he had last year. Yeah. But the fact that he throws 97 and he's got a pretty good curveball and, third pitch that kind of keeps pitchers or batters off balance.
He got 8 whiffs on 11 swings against his curveball yesterday.
Yeah. Like that plays as a reliever in the playoffs, right? It certainly does. And I'm not convinced that Painter or Suarez are starting a playoff game for this team. Again, all of this has to do with health. If you assume that every other pitcher is healthy, I think that the Phillies can add these players, these starting pitchers, to their playoff bullpen and make that bullpen pretty damn good.
But what does that look like in the short term? And as you're trying to make the playoffs, as you're trying to potentially win a division that you're a half game out of as we talk right now, yes, I think that there is enough here in terms of the starting pitching depth that come October, you can make this all work. So 2 questions, though. One, how do you bridge the gap to October?
Yeah.
And then the other question is, how much anxiety should you have about the fact that, yes, these arms, a guy like Nick Abel could potentially play out of the bullpen. Maybe a guy like Andrew Painter does play out of the bullpen. We know that Ranger Suarez can throw out of the bullpen. But if it's not what you're accustomed to getting, like I just talked about, I don't care about using Jose Alvarado late in the season because I want to take down innings and win games where I can. And if he's the guy that's going to allow me to do that come September, then let's do it, even if he's not going to be there in October. But how do you massage it so that these guys aren't total wild cards? Like, we're not talking about relievers. We're talking about starters transitioning to relief roles. Do you do that on the fly? Do you just let the calendar switch to October and say, all right, you're a reliever now, go get outs? Or do you kind of give them a soft transition towards the back half of the regular season and let them evolve into those roles? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of that. I don't think it's crazy to think that some of these guys will start pitching out of the bullpen in September, but I also don't think they need that much time, like, to transition. I mean, I'll flash you back to Zach Eflin, right? And in 22, I mean, that was, he was a starter until the last month of the season. Then he became their closer, in fact, at the end of the year. It wasn't ideal. He wasn't great, but that was something that they did, and even when Rangers done it in the past, he kind of just rolled into that role. Like, he didn't need a lot of time to kind of get adapted to.
But isn't that more about like their makeup, and not to say that a guy like Nick Abel or a guy like Andrew Painter doesn't have that makeup, or that they wouldn't be as confident. I don't know them, so I have no ability to project and say, oh, they certainly be able to do that. But I mean, one of the things you always hear about Rangers, like the heartbeat, the slow heartbeat, nothing rattles them. Like, you have to have a certain makeup to do it, and a certain skill set, a certain pitch repertoire to do it. So I think that it's an interesting idea, and I do think that they're going to have some options when they get to October. And I don't think it's maybe as bleak or as dire as it seems in this moment. But I guess the thing that we're looking at most immediately is the present. What do you do right now? Like, we know that Taijuan Walker is going to start on Wednesday. Like, let's work through this. And I guess before we do that, let's go through what we saw this weekend with some of the names that would be in play here. Ranger Suarez. What was your impression of Ranger Suarez this weekend against the Pirates?
Really good. You've got one bad pitch in that game. Seriously. I mean, one bad pitch, and it happened to be a 3-run homer. Other than that, I thought he was really good.
So now you're talking about over his last 2 starts, Ranger Suarez has thrown 14 innings. He's allowed 3 earned runs, which means that 13 of the 14 innings that he's pitched have been scoreless.
Yeah.
So he is the obvious candidate. He was the one that everyone was talking about yesterday. Ranger Suarez, he's obviously going to go fill this role now. It's going to push up his timeline, run him out of the bullpen. And I tweeted something, got some pushback from some people. And I said, any conversation right now on May 18th about Ranger Suarez going to the bullpen, if I were Ranger Suarez, I'd say, sure, I want a contract. And the point being, the retort being that, well, he has no leverage. I don't think that's entirely true, quite honestly, but I'll even acknowledge that certainly if he wants to throw and they force him to go be out of the bullpen, I guess he's got to do it. But I just don't think that's how the Phillies do business. Anthony, I'd be stunned if Ranger Suarez is coming out of bullpen in the month of May for this team.
No, I don't think he is. I really don't. And I honestly think that everything is internal at this point. Like, I do not think that they're going to go out and make a big trade. Could I see them going out and pulling somebody off the street that's still out there, to just kind of come in really cheap and, hey, let's give it a shot and take a look and
the
see.
David Robertson route again? Do you?
Well, I'm thinking lefties, right?
Yeah.
You got to go left-handed. And I don't know. I mean, that's I don't know what the situation is going to be there. Like, But yeah, something along those lines. I think maybe that happens, but I still think everything is internal for now. And then as you approach the deadline, you make a determination of, okay, here's what we're going to do. These are going to be the guys that we're going to kind of turn to in the postseason. We're going to convert from starters to relievers. We still probably have to bring in one guy or maybe two at the most, and then you go and get those players in July. I don't think it's happening before July. I just don't.
No, neither do I. I mean, look, maybe Ranger Suarez is the most logical candidate to go out there and fill this role. Left-hander, has some experience doing it. He's recorded key outs in important situations. We do know that he has the mental makeup to do it. But as we've noted on the show now a handful of times, as we've talked about pitching hypotheticals, he is in a contract year. Scott Boras is his agent. And I know as much as people listen to this and go, well, who cares? Who cares if he's in a contract year? You're getting paid to pitch for the Phillies. If they want you to pitch a certain way, go do it. But I would just tell you again that I think that they are very aware of how you treat players, what is fair, what is right. And I cannot imagine that they would, to a player that has been as important to the team as Ranger Suarez has been in a contract year, after 2 games in which he's been spectacular, they say, you know what? We want you to go be a multi-inning guy out of the pen or be a lefty specialist out of the pen because we have a deficiency there. I just don't think it's a good way to do business. That's not how I think the Phillies do business. I don't think that that's how they would want to operate. Right. And for all of those reasons, I don't see him as an immediate fix in this. And by the way, all that aside, we can talk about how good Taijuan Walker's been and how great Abel was yesterday, and we will in a minute. But like, good starting pitchers don't just fall off of trees. And if this guy's rolling and he's showing you what he can be and he's able to do it with some consistency, why would you want to move him to the bullpen?
So here's the thing. They're not going to, you're right. They're not going to do that now. They're not moving Ranger Suarez. Like it's just not going to happen. I think there's a chance that they move Ranger Suarez there late in the year or at the end of the year.
I do too. After he's able to showcase his worth as a starting pitcher and says, look, okay.
But as far as why would you want to? Because you need him to do something else, right? Like it's great that you've pitched really well as a starter, but your value to us right now because of how deep our starting pitching is to be out of that bullpen.
Okay, so all things aside, if we take all of those considerations about the contract and doing right by the player and all of that, and maybe how the team would receive it, would you do it today if you could? If you could just table all that other stuff, that is the deficiency, that is the void. Ranger Suarez, you go fill
it. I don't necessarily see the need to do it today.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, like I don't see the need to do it today because again, and like I'm gonna throw this back to. Remember when they got swept by the Mets? Boy, it seems like forever ago, right? When they got swept by the Mets. They got swept by the Mets. And before that series, you asked me, how big of a series it was. And I said to you, I don't care what happens in this series. I don't care if they win all 3, if they lose all 3. It's just a series in April. Mm-hmm. What happens in April is not indicative of what's going to happen in October. And I say the same thing about this now. Like what's going on in these games in May is not indicative of what's going to happen at the end of the season. So there's really no reason to sit there and turn a player into a different role now because you're like panicked. Like, oh no, we don't have that internal replacement for Jose Alvarado in-house. So it's got to be the only one of the other lefties we have on the rotation. No, it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, I guess if he's performing at the level that he is currently performing or anywhere near it in the neighborhood of it, I still think that there's more value in having the deficiency in the bullpen and having him pitch at that level as a starter. Also, you have a lot of pieces in play here. I don't think that Ranger Suarez is going to get moved at the deadline. I don't. But no. Would you not at least want to create a sample here leading up to it where you say, like, this guy is throwing well as a starting pitcher. If someone wants to get nuts, let's leave that option out there. I think that there would be enough interest in him if he's performing at that level that someone might make a call. And again, I don't think the Phillies want to move him, and I don't think that they will. but I would think I would want to leave that possibility on the table. Now, talk to me in 2 weeks if they've blown 6 games and they can't get anybody from the left side out. Maybe my opinion about this will change, but right now, given where they're at in the standings, given where we're at in the calendar, I just don't think that taking an effective starting pitcher and doing that in this situation with who he is and where he's at in his career makes a lot of sense. We talk all the time about political considerations. How do agents view the Phillies? Very favorably. How do players view the Phillies organization? Very favorably. I just don't think you're doing right by the guy. I think it creates bad vibes. I don't think it would be the right move from a baseball standpoint right now on May 19th. And I just don't think it would play well. I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. Then you got to wonder, Bob, like who in the organization could come up and fill that role. The problem when you look at the minor leagues, right, is they got a bunch of guys down there who could certainly fill a bullpen role. They don't have lefties down there. That's the one thing that they don't have. Like the only lefty in AAA, and is not even on the 40-man, is Nick Vespi.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing special there, right? There's just nothing in the minor leagues that's left-handed.
Right.
So that's to me is the one thing where I sit there and go, maybe you have to do something to bring in a left-handed pitcher.
Well,
that's why I was saying maybe you got, I don't know. Is Will Smith cooked? I know he never signed with anybody. Like the veteran pitcher was with Kansas City last year, right? Like, is he cooked? He closed for the freaking Astros in the World Series 3 years ago.
Just hold an open track. Can you throw 92? Are you left-handed? And see what happens.
You know what I'm saying? Like that. Like it's things like that. Like maybe that I think that they have to consider. But at the same time, yeah, you're not moving Ranger. You're right. There's more to it than just you want to make sure that you do right by players. We talked about this as why they didn't move Trey Turner off the shortstop going into this season. It's the same thing. You made a promise to the guy that you're going to be the shortstop. You can't in year 3 then just abandon that, right? Like that doesn't look.
But as is the case with Turner and would be with Suarez, you will reach a point where you say, okay, we've done right by you to an extent.
Yes.
Reasonably so. Now we have to do what's right for us. And I'm not pushing back against anybody that would suggest that based on what they have, that he is the guy that would likely fill that role in time. But I just don't think you do it now. I think that you owe it to him to let him build up his case and build up his market as a starter going into next season. I think that that's what they will do. Now, let's go here, I guess.
Well, but before you change that, we have a ton of comments.
Okay.
We have a ton of comments. So let's bring them on just to pop them up. And there's a couple that we can react to. Some of them we're going to laugh at, but some of them we can react to. Kyle Seiler said, "So this is the Trade Ranger Suarez podcast." That's where we're at, right? We're not trading Ranger Suarez. Ryan wants to give you your flowers for predicting the lingering Nola stint. We'll get to that, and we'll get to that a little bit later on.
I did think he was hurt the other night.
Yeah, and turned out you were right. And Chris wanted to point out that a 2-hour baseball game is a beautiful thing, which was wild yesterday. But he had asked the question about the Jose suspension, all but force Ranger to the bullpen, and it's not that. It's not going to happen now. Here's a question that Jerry Martin's asking, and look, it's not one that's. I mean, we can give the honest answer to it because it's a very simple answer because it's a league rule. But I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily agree with this either. He says, "Why do they lose Alvarado for the postseason if he gets back before the season is over?" That's the part that I don't get, and I kind of agree. Like, isn't an 80-game suspension enough?
It's pretty beefy suspension. I mean, the answer to the question is that it's just a further deterrent. But yeah, I think it's kind of fair to wonder. I would also say that when Jerks and Profar got hit with this back in March, I kind of laughed and said,
right,
what you get? So now that the problem's on your doorstep, I kind of go, is that really that fair?
Yeah.
What do you like, real? You know what? The one part that escaped me before we took it down this road. This happens. You're in the clubhouse yesterday. Obviously, there's not going to be another player in there that's like, Jose let us down. But like, what do you think that does for him within the clubhouse, or does for him long term? I mean, we've seen plenty of prominent athletes be suspended for banned substances. Lane Johnson has been suspended for banned substances and is one of the most beloved Eagles in modern history, right? So it's not like you can't overcome it. But like, what does it do in the clubhouse when you have this do or die season? Everything's magnified. You're trying to get to a World Series. You have a deficiency as is. Now it's amplified because you've made a mistake. Like, dude, guys go like, dude, what the? I'll spare the F word here, but like, what the hell, man? Like, come on, what are you doing? And if you're the Phillies, do you say $9 million next year option? We really want to get involved with that, or like, are these things all separate?
Yeah, I think that the players probably look at it like, a family member did something wrong and you're upset with them, but you're not going to ostracize him by any stretch of the imagination. Like Alvarado is really the well-liked guy.
Yeah.
And like he's in a lot of ways has been the leader of the bullpen in from a personality perspective. And they really love him in that clubhouse. And so I would tell you that their reaction is going to be to support the guy as best they can, but it doesn't mean that they don't feel like, come on, dude. Like, what did you do? Like, why wouldn't you just check the list? Like, we all have this list, and you just got to look at the ingredients before we put anything in your body. Just look at the list, everything. Like, it's simple, and you made a dumb mistake, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of what the locker room is. As far as the Phillies are concerned, I think it depends on how he comes back, Bob. I think it does. I think that part of those 15 games or whatever it is that he's going to pitch at the end of the season, if he comes back and he's still as good as he was at the beginning of the season, even though he can't pitch in the playoffs, they might pick up that 9.
Fair to wonder too, though. And I mean, the most obvious thing in all of this is that he shows up to spring training, he's throwing 101 miles an hour. And I was like, wow, he looks revitalized. I'm not telling you that he was doing that because of whatever he took, but you can't ignore the possibility that there was a correlation here either.
Sure. Absolutely can't. Absolutely cannot ignore it, right? Derek asks, do they even have attractive assets to give up to other teams?
All right, great. So I'm glad this question gets asked. And if this did not happen over the weekend and we were talking about, wow, this team is playing very good baseball. They certainly look like they're in it. We've said a million times, what do they need? Well, they need another bullpen piece and they need another outfielder that can hit a little bit from the right side. We've said it a million times. We'd be talking about, well, so what do they have to give up to make a trade? If this didn't happen, we would be having that conversation. Now that this has happened, I think my question to you is, you propose that they have this surplus of starting pitching that they will probably mold into ways to patch up these relief holes in October. We would both agree that they are going to add to this mix as is with an established reliever. At least we would think so. But does that surplus of starting pitching and the creativity that it will likely take, plus maybe one addition, get it done? Or do you look at it now and go, man, they needed a guy before. Now they need another guy on top of it. And, oh, yes, we will probably have to get creative with some of these arms that are starters as well. Like, did this weekend double the need to go out and bring in more players? Like, is it we just went from needing one arm to two? And then the question becomes, like we just saw on the screen there, do you have the parts that are necessary to get this done?
Yeah, I think what this did is this may have changed the fortunes of one or two guys in your system.
And is that Crawford?
Crawford may be the one that goes out now. Maybe he was untouchable before and now he's not. And maybe a guy like Abel is now a guy that you go, let's keep him. Maybe originally he was going to be part of a trade. And now it's like, maybe we can.
Do you think after yesterday, I mean, or independent of yesterday, just let's take his resurgence at AAA this year.
Correct.
And forget about what we saw yesterday, which is a whole different level of
Yeah.
And you say maybe we're more inclined to keep this guy now rather than make him part of a trade.
Yes.
That's interesting because I think some people probably would have looked at yesterday and said, I hope teams were watching this because here's your outbound piece.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could well be that too. But maybe Mick Abel, if you're trading Mick Abel for a full-time center fielder, that's a different conversation. If we're talking about fixing the bullpen,
yeah,
you're not sure. I don't think you're.
I would not trade Mick Abel for 3 months of a guy.
Right. And my thought process there is that maybe
think about what I just said. Think about what I just said, though. Is that ridiculous? Am I overreacting now to 2 months of Mick Abel? Because if I say all-star level reliever on an expiring deal for Mick Abel on April 1st, you'd be like, yeah, in a heartbeat.
Well, because Mick Abel on April 1st was coming off of a terrible season.
Is his stock, I mean, I know his stock's way up, but is the perception of Mick Abel so different now in such a short amount of time that we wouldn't consider, like if I said to you, 8th, 9th inning lockdown guy from Mick Abel, he could help you win a World Series this year. We don't do that now. Because my initial reaction there was no. But
yeah.
Is that getting swept up in the moment where 4 weeks from now, remember when we wouldn't trade Mick Abel for?
And who knows, we may change our mind 4 weeks from now. You might be right. But I look at it, Bob, and I sit there and say, the one thing that I got to see yesterday with him is I got to see, and he's not, I mean, I know he threw 99 to O'Neal Cruz. I just think he was amped up in the first inning, but he kind of settled in at 96, 97 with that fastball and good movement on his breaking pitches and not withering in the moment of having a major league debut and really having arguably one of the best major league debuts a pitcher could have, right? I mean, really, when you look at it. And you sit there and go, there's something about that mental makeup that's different this year. And that was one of the things when I talked to him down in up in Lehigh, and I talked to Stubbs about him. I talked to the manager, Anthony Escobar, about him, or Anthony Contreras about him. Apologies to Anthony Contreras. But when I talked to all those guys about him, everybody said the same thing, that he grew up from last year to this year. And maybe that's all it took. And Preston Mattingly, I had a conversation with him the other day, GM of the Phillies, and he said that, everybody wants a top prospect, first round pick, to have this rocket ship to the major leagues. And he says, it doesn't always work that way. And he said, for this guy, so I've known him since he was, pitching in, I forget what it was, something I had never heard of, some kind of showcase thing I had never heard of in Oregon when he was, I don't know, a sophomore in high school, and the area code games. You ever heard of the area code games?
I have. Yeah, they're a big deal. And he didn't even pitch his senior year of high school, right? That was the COVID year, was it not?
It was COVID year. Yeah. Okay, so I had never heard of the area code games. That was something new to me. But he said he used to watch him in the area code games as a sophomore in high school, and so that's how long he's been following him. And he says, what you see now is a whole different person than what you had seen previous. Now, he always had the stuff and you liked what he had, but did he have the makeup? And he says, you're seeing a different makeup in Mick Abel right now. And so when I hear these things from multiple people, and I sit there and go, okay, and then you see it play out. I know it's against an awful Pirates lineup. It's one game against a bad Pirates lineup.
No, but there's also, I will say that, it's a terrible Pirates team. They are just an atrocious baseball team. But in fairness to Mick Abel, it's a tremendous amount of pressure to make your major league debut under any circumstance. And it's also added pressure when staring across from you is a guy like Paul Skeens, and going in, you have almost no margin for error. It's one thing to go fire it up against the Pirates and have a 5-0 lead in the first inning. It's an entirely different thing when I got to be good or we're not going to win this baseball game today.
Yeah, you're matching zeros with Paul Skeens. Yeah, like that's an impressive thing about his makeup. Like that, you see that yesterday and you go, okay, I can see this guy being of use now in this season in some capacity. They're going to keep him stretched out. They're going to keep him starting in AAA, and that's what he should be doing because long term he's a starting pitcher, right? But can you see a world where Mick Abel gets called back up here to be a right-handed reliever in the 6th, 7th inning for the Phillies? Yeah, I can.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to figure out as far as Abel goes, because now we're having multiple conversations. Like, I wanted to just talk about his start yesterday and how great of a moment it was, but you can't ignore the fact that it happened in the midst of this situation where you're trying to figure out, well, what are the big picture implications of all of this? And so here's the deal. I mean, you go back and look at him last year. What was it, 6.46 ERA? And he had 6.46 walks per 9 innings, the same number, 6.46 walks per 9. Now it's down to 3.69 in the minors this year, which is much better. It's not great, but that was what was so amazing about yesterday. So many first pitch strikes, attacking the zone. He actually got squeezed a couple times where you talk about the mental toughness and the ability to lock in. Some of those calls could have totally derailed him. And instead he'd come back the next pitch. Perfect. I mean, he was just stayed dialed in, start to finish. 62 of the 84 pitches were strikes. And I'm trying to figure out, are we seeing a guy that's just taking one massive step here? Or are we seeing a guy that's taking some baby steps, happen to put it all together for 6 innings on one day against a crappy offense? But in reality, look, this is not going to be this linear upward straight shot to the moon. He's now interesting. But next time he takes the ball, it may not be so good.
Yeah,
that's what I think we're trying to figure out here now.
Yeah, and I think so. And again, I can only go by what I've talking to him, talking to other people, and when I talked to him last week, again, this is before the start yesterday. He was pretty open about the fact that last year after a start, he would go home immediately and watch every pitch that he threw, and he was very hard on himself. He was a perfectionist, and he would dwell on, what could I have done a little bit differently on this particular pitch or whatever. And he said, this year I've kind of gotten to the point where it's like, hey, if I'm going to make a bad pitch, I'm going to make a bad pitch. The next one just needs to be better. And he's not dwelling on those pitches. He basically said, and this was his quote, that he created an unhealthy situation for himself last year, where he was dwelling on all that so much, and it just snowballed on him.
Yeah.
Whereas this year he's not doing that. He's going home and he's not worried about it. He's not thinking about pitching when he gets home. He's just relaxing and works. Has his work day and he's got his home life. And I think that's helped. And maybe that is part of growing up and getting a little bit more mature. So who knows, Bob? Maybe that's what we're seeing out of him. And no one's going to sit here and tell you that he's going to go out and pitch like that every game. But there is at least you see the stuff that's there and go, well, if this kid can harness that, then there's something here. And maybe we don't move on from that in a big trade. One other thing I want to get back to, and this is in the comments, and it relates to the whole Alvarado thing. And I wanted to get your take on this too, because I was fighting with a guy on Twitter yesterday about this. And now our good buddy Ford chimes in. And Ford gets mad that I don't put his stuff up on the screen. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. But he says, I think the Phillies are complicit in this. I understand players will try to get an edge, et cetera, but this is a massively important player to now be without. Brutal. And I had a guy basically saying, how do the Phillies let this happen yesterday? And that's what I was fighting with them about. Aren't they in touch with their players? Aren't they in constant communication about what's going into their players' bodies, et cetera, et cetera? And I argue that the Phillies do, and every team, I'm not just trying to say it's just the Phillies who do this, but every team in baseball has their people, their training staff, their medical people are in constant contact with these players and saying, hey, listen, you need to let us know if you're uncertain about what's in something, check with us first before you do it. They beat this into their heads. There are signs all over clubhouses that let them know about these things. Like, it's everywhere. But what are they supposed to do? Have a trainer in the guy's house and for 4 months in the wintertime every day and checking what he's taking, what supplements he's taking? There's only so much a team can do, right? Or am I wrong on this? Should the Phillies have been more on top of it?
Think that I tend to agree with you. And I am aware that the teams have people and these messages are communicated outward, and it's really up to the adult players,
yes,
to be mindful of what's going into their body and why. So are the Phillies complicit in Jose Alvarado's suspension? I'd say no, because think about how many different players have walked in and out of that clubhouse over the last number of years who have not had this issue, right? Who was the last Philly to be hit? Was it Galvis?
Yeah, last Philly. They've had a couple minor leaguers
that
have had it happen. Actually, they got that one guy that they acquired in a trade, and then it happened like
getting somebody that was more recent than Galvis. But that said,
you remember that Jose Rodriguez? They got him last year from the White Sox, and then like he was in the minor leagues, and then they were like, oh well, this is an infield, maybe like an infielder that they might think about for next year, and then he got suspended in June last year.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't unique to the Phillies, and it's not unique to baseball, but what the conversation ultimately comes back to, and I think that there are certainly a number of guys that just are ignorant and they make mistakes, and they are genuinely surprised when their name pops up on these positive tests, and then they got to deal with it. But I think the larger thing is that you live in an environment where millions and millions of dollars in financial security is at stake. Now, in this case, he gets burned and he's losing out on that money. But if you're a guy who's coming off of a year where you're largely disappointing, you have command issues, you have deteriorating velocity, your effectiveness is diminishing, and you're like, again, I don't know if he did this knowingly. I know what the story was. I know what Dave Dombrowski said. I get all that. But if you're just a player who knowingly does violate these rules, you're basically looking at the risk reward component here, where you're like, this is my career. I can prolong it if I do this. Yeah. And if I can get another 2 to 3 miles on my fastball, or if I can make that pain go away, or if I can hit the ball with 3 miles per hour additional exit velocity on average over the course of 162 games, that changes everything for me. And it doesn't necessarily make the sport complicit in it either, but the environment sort of allows for this to happen. And it allows for certain players to take risks. And again, not saying that he did knowingly do it, but he did something wrong. And now here we are having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ford's answering, just so you know, just so we put it up. So he wanted to get,
not entirely fault.
Yeah. He says complicit, not entirely their fault, but partially it is. Absolutely. I stand by that. Not sure if you're saying the Phillies are completely absolved. I don't think they are, but I get your other point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only thing is, right, like I guess when it comes out, like was the team complicit with Profar when this happens to 5 other players this season in time? Are those teams going to be complicit? So it's like, again, is it the team specifically, or is it the ecosystem of the sport and just what it is? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, not to say maybe the Phillies didn't do a good job communicating with Jose Alvarado what he could and could not take. I mean, it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think to Ford's point, like, I don't think that's an insane point to make. I'm not like, oh, you're totally wrong, bro. Like, yeah, I mean, look, it happened and fingers get pointed.
Yeah. Fair enough.
All right, look, so here's my thing now. Mick Abel, right? I want to finish the Mick Abel conversation and then kind of jump to the next thing. Does yesterday 6 innings against the Pirates change the evaluation of what Mick Abel is to other teams?
I think other teams are now maybe a little bit more aware. Maybe they saw, if you're a rival scout and you're watching Lehigh Valley and you're watching Mick Abel pitch well against Lehigh Valley, oh, that's an interesting thing. Maybe we keep an eye on it down the line. Let's see if those numbers keep up, whatever. But then you see him come up to the major leagues and do what he did yesterday. Like you said, go toe to toe with Paul Skeens, matching zeros. And now all of a sudden you're like, okay. All right, maybe there's something else there.
So do you bring him, so what is his immediate future? And if you're trying to ultimately, if you think we're going to trade him, like, we're probably destined to use him as a piece. We have needs. We're trying to win a World Series. We didn't, up until a month ago, really think about him as a guy that we would be upset to part ways with. We can't let this recent run of events alter our thinking too much. And I'm not telling you that that's wise, but I'm just saying as a counterpoint here, before we would get a list of players, we're going to get a list of players here in the next few weeks that become the ones that we talk about through the trade deadline. And we'd start throwing out hypothetical trade scenarios. And it would be something like Abel and Crawford, and then, hop on Pipeline and take prospects 15 to 22. And you can have 2 more of those. It's a situation where they maybe just look at it and say, like, look, we could still trade him. We very well might trade him, but it's just not going to be Abel plus. Now it might just be Abel.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think, we talked about we've been talking about the Phillies' top prospects forever, and you sit there and go, all right, Painter, Miller, Crawford, they're 1, 2, 3. Well, then there was always a debate about 4. Was Moises Chase coming into the season? He has to undergo Tommy John surgery now. He was pitching at Reading. His velocity was way down, and all of a sudden he hurt his elbow throwing a pitch, and now he's got Tommy John, so he's going to be out for pretty much until 27. I mean, he might get back at the end of 26 in the minors, but you're really looking at spring training 27 for him. Well, who's the next guy? Well, Eduardo Tait, the catcher. Okay, yeah, all right, whatever. But he's still 19 years old. All right, now they got that Aaron Escobar, who's been playing third base in Clearwater, and he's ripping the ball all over the place. All right, yeah, okay, maybe he's that next guy. And nobody talked about Mick Abel. Everybody forgot about Mick Abel. First round pick. Don't forget. Everybody forgot that this guy, because of how bad his season was last year. I'm arguing now that maybe we've all just looked past him too long, and maybe Mick Abel is in fact number 4 on that list of Phillies potential prospects. And if that's the case, then yes, then Mick Abel can be, if you are trading him, he can be the primary piece in a deal and not a secondary piece in a deal.
Very, very astute point. I would agree. As you're talking here, I just hopped on Twitter and I didn't see this, but I guess you saw yesterday. I wanted to talk about Ryan Kerkering at some point here, and he gets himself into some trouble pretty immediately. In the 7th inning yesterday, and I thought the Pirates sort of bailed him out. Bad bunt, gave up an out once they finally had created their only offensive momentum of the day, and quickly thereafter the inning's over. Devin Caney of WIP during the was it back-to-back walks to start the inning? Is that how that inning started yesterday?
Yeah.
I think we all need to have an honest conversation about Ryan Kerkering. And Matt Strom here at 11:45, about an hour ago as we record this, responded, "Please enlighten me." So we have a Phillies player responding to a Phillies reporter here live on Twitter, but it hasn't gone any further than that yet. But Matt Strom's out looking for a fight, it looks like.
I love that guy, man. He's he will call you out. Like if you write something or say something or whatever, and it's ridiculous, he's going to call you out on it.
Well, now in Devin's defense, is it ridiculous to have a conversation about Ryan Kerkering? I don't know.
Well, what's the conversation? So here's the thing with Kerkering, right? Yes, he's not been as good this year, right? The Phillies kind of slow played him a little bit, like they do when guys are not going well. They kind of give him a few days off, put you in lower leverage.
He's been better, yeah.
Right. And now, so this is 4 straight appearances that he hasn't given up a run. Okay, yeah, he had 2 walks.
I mean, look, seriously though. I mean, he had 2 walks against a Pirates team that can't hit. You can't start a series or start an inning with 2 walks. I actually am with her on this one. Come on, man. Look, not every inning is going to be perfect. These guys aren't robots. I'm not going to go out there and throw immaculate innings all the time. I get that.
Yeah.
But the microscope is on this guy. We're looking at these higher leverage premium arms to be more consistent.
He needs to be better. There's no question. But when Devin's putting out a tweet, and I don't want to speak for her, but I think when she's putting out a tweet that we need to have a conversation about him, well, what are you saying is that conversation?
Right.
Are you saying that he needs to go down to the minors?
Yeah.
It may not be that, and we talked about this, right? A couple of weeks ago, he was really struggling, and he has an option. And what are you going to do when this guy comes back? And it's well, you do have that option to do that. I don't necessarily know if they're going to go that route, but you do have that option. That's fine if you want to have that conversation. But what are you saying when we have to have a conversation about the guy? And I think that's why Matt Strom's saying, well,
you like that out of Matt Strom sticking up for his teammate on
I love it.
X platform.
I love it. I love Matt Strom sticking up for his teammate.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, he's a little fired up this year with his. I mean, look, he's always been an open, honest guy, right? Yeah. You've seen that in the past, but he's a little bit more direct with stuff this year. He's a little bit more grizzled this year. He's becoming that old veteran guy.
That's good.
And I like it. I like it. I like that out of
Pick
match
up for your teammates. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my eye on that interaction, see if it goes any further there. All right. Look, the last thing that I wanted to get to, and I'm not sure what else you have on your plate here, Bryce Harper. Harper.
Oh, I thought you wanted to. If you wanted, before we get to Harper, I didn't know if you wanted to stick with the bullpen just for one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you mentioned earlier that we now have Dennis Eckersley in the bullpen. But is it time to start throwing out the apologies to Jordan Romano?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to say that he is what we've seen over the last 3 weeks, but I guess he's not a total dumpster fire. That was a huge mistake. And how could the Phillies have possibly evaluated him as such? And what a horrible, horrible signing. You do look at this now. He's a 7.27 ERA. His last 7 games, 7 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts, a 0.57 whip. Pretty good. And I would say that we've had bad pitchers go on runs of 7 games where they pitch pretty well, but you're starting to believe what you're seeing here a little bit more now.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, I can't escape the fact that if you pull out that one disastrous outing, it's been really good for over a month.
Yeah, it's like Zack Wheeler would be Cy Young right now if Johan Rojas caught a fly ball against the Braves and didn't cost him 3 earned runs. Look at Zack Wheeler's numbers right now and tell me how much better they'd be if that didn't happen. So
yeah, I know.
There's always the if game and the if inning and the if batter, but I hear you.
Yeah,
his numbers are purely inflated by that one super disaster of an appearance. So yeah, I mean, look, I feel better about him, and they need him to be almost perfect now because they have no depth behind him.
Is he the closer in your mind?
Yeah, I mean now he is because
I
think Strom, you now have to, for what I said earlier, I think there's going to be 9 innings where he's probably unavailable, and so Strom just gets it because he's the next man up. But I think you have to try to use Strom more strategically now because you don't have that additional firepower from the left side. So in doing so, if you're like, well, we're going to just block out one guy and let him be the closer, I think it's got to be Romano.
Yeah,
that's a fun thing. That's a fun thing that I just said. But no, I mean, he's been really good lately. It's a cool story. He seems like a great guy. So it's like, it's one of those things where you're happy to see that happen. And, he was very beat up over the way that his tenure here started. So
yeah.
Bryce Harper, real quick. Just let me get to Bryce Harper.
Yeah,
we don't talk. We do a Phillies podcast, and I feel like we talk about Bryce Harper for like 3% of it. He was 6 for 10 this weekend. Yeah. Double, 2 walks. His average from the start of the series to the finish of it, 236 to 257. He's up to now. So OPS jumped from 780 to 814. He actually has a higher on base percentage than he did last season. 376. It was 373 last year. Obviously, the slugging percentage is considerably down though, and that's the big. That's like the big highlighted thing in his numbers here. You look at Bryce Harper's weekend and say, like, I think it's coming. I think that we saw him start to put together some more consistent at bats. I know his hit yesterday against Skeens was an absolute fart out the center field. And he also got his doors blown off in the first at bat. All that said, though, you look at the collection or the collective of his at bats this weekend. Do we feel like he's going to go out to Colorado and get on one here finally? Are we about to do this?
I think I texted you this earlier in the week.
Yeah, you did. I'm just trying to set you up.
That the road trip was going to be when the Bryce Harper breakout really happened. And to be honest with you, it started a little sooner than I thought. I kind of got the sense that just the way things were going that it was around the corner, and I kind of thought it wouldn't happen until they got back out on the road. But yeah, he has looked good in his last 4 games. Go back to the last game against the Cardinals. He was actually good in that game too. Actually, that whole doubleheader, that was the first game against the Cardinals. He had the three hits, right?
Yeah.
It was the first game against Cardinals, the first game of the doubleheader. But anyway, it goes back to Wednesday. Yeah, he's been much better, looked a lot more like Bryce, and that's a good sign for the Phillies because you can love a lot of the things that they're doing with how the one thing that I will say about this past week, even the Cardinals series, they worked those starting pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
They worked them. They got them throwing a ton of pitches, even if they didn't score a lot of runs. And you sit there and go, "Oh man, they should have got more than one run that inning," or they didn't score that inning. They had guys on base, whatever.
Yeah.
They worked those starting pitchers. And so if you're going to have guys who are going to, make life miserable on starting pitchers and there was one at bat yesterday, for example. I don't want this to be a tangent, but this is going to get back to Bryce Harper. But for example, Nick Castellanos against Paul Skeens in one at bat ends up flying out, but it was a 9-pitch at bat against Paul Skeens. And we were laughing, you and I, via text, because it was a 3-2 pitch he ends up flying out on, and you said they could have thrown that pitch in the dugout.
That pitch could have been thrown in the dugout, and he was swinging at it. Yes, I stand by that.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. But the reality of it is that a lot of guys are doing that, right? Having those longer at bats, better approach. The reason that it hasn't been an overwhelming success for the Phillies is because they haven't had that boom in the middle of the lineup other than Schwarber.
Yeah.
If Harper becomes himself again, we are going to suddenly look at this Phillies offense in a whole different way. So that's why it matters.
He's one big game away from his numbers being in a place where you're like, oh, okay, that's Bryce Harper. He goes out tonight. He's 3 for 4 against the Rockies with 2 homers, and he drives in 4. The OPS is going to be up to 850. He's going to be hitting 267. Then you look at his pacing numbers, and you're going to say he's on pace to walk 120 times, score 100 runs, hit 32 homers. It's all going to start to look like you'd expect it to look. He's one big game away from it if he can do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the thing that's standing out to me, Bob, that if Bryce starts hitting like Bryce again, we're going to look at this Phillies offense differently.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that's just kind of,
yeah.
It's the one thing you know what I'm saying?
It's the one thing where you're like, yeah, they're putting together some at-bats, they're scoring runs, their numbers look pretty decent across the board, top 8 this, top 12 that, but you are just missing that fear of God, middle of the order. You get him going, even if Schwarber cools down a little bit, it gets pretty scary in there. That all said, they need Max Kepler to do something, and they need him to do something against right-handed pitching as well. Yeah. That's actually now becoming an issue. It's not just a vulnerability against lefties; it's a vulnerability against everything. They really need him to do something here.
Yeah, he's been bad.
It's been
the past
tough.
couple weeks.
It's a tough watch here last couple weeks. Yeah. All right, I got a wrap here. So you got one last thing?
Well, one last thing is just looking around the league. I just want to get your reaction to a couple things that happened this weekend. Mm-hmm. First and foremost being that the Los Angeles Angels swept the
Freeway Series, a shocker.
Swept the Dodgers. What do you think about the Dodgers right now?
I think the Dodgers are a really good team that's probably going to be in the NLCS, and they've got starting pitching issues, and they just can't keep guys healthy, and they're not a super team. They're very good. Probably the World Series, my World Series pick in this moment, but probably a little bit more. There's probably a little bit more that's my word of the day, vulnerability than maybe we thought there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in agreement with you. Yankees taking 2 of 3 from the Mets.
I watched pretty much the entire game Saturday and Sunday. Was it Braziban last night who blew up at the end? And I mean, obviously Pete Alonso makes a horrendous throw to the plate. It was nice to see the Mets falter. It really was. It was nice to see Juan Soto go 1 for 10. I think he walked 4 times, but wasn't an impact player up there. The funniest thing, my takeaway from the Mets Yankees Subway Series, the 2 biggest things. It's so funny to watch the Mets and Yankees fans argue about Juan Soto and kind of claim him, right? Like, he doesn't want to be in Queens. He wants to be a Yankee. And then Mets fans saying, no, he wants to be here. The Yankees are yesterday's news. But then the Mets, as they're doing this, are like, where's the Soto shuffle? Where's the swagger? Where's the impact player I thought we were getting? This guy's a bum. He's not running out of the box in the 8th inning on a ball up the middle where the second baseman's diving to his right and some hustle down the line maybe changes that inning. Like, they're a lot of complaints, a lot of nervousness about Juan Soto. So it's like they're doing this thing where they're claiming him, but they're also like, this isn't what we signed up for, all in the same breath. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. The Mets pitching staff is starting to kind of.
Yeah. But you know what, man? It's like Peterson was pretty good again last night. Like he wasn't great early, but then he settled down against a good lineup. McGill is the one guy that's definitely regressing. We're seeing that now play out. But I mean, like all these guys, Griffin Canning, like that guy stinks. He stinks. He's been awesome this year. He's been awesome. I don't know. And it's like, I know it's like, I keep calling it like the voodoo magic. Is it that, or are they really just getting the most out of these guys? Like, do they have a good staff and a good analytics team that's really helping these guys maximize their output?
Maybe, but I still don't buy it. I just don't, because I'm telling you, the Braves,
how many wins do you have for the Mets right now?
For the end of the year?
Yeah, right now.
90.
Okay, so you have the Phillies ahead of the Mets.
Yeah,
and then you have the Braves storming ahead at this point. Still,
they're coming. They're over 500.
Yeah,
over 500. They were. Remember, were they 5-13? Yeah. Now they're 24-23. Yeah. Here they come. And Strider's off the IL today.
Phillies have them what next week?
Next Tuesday, week from tomorrow. Yeah.
Is this a make or break series for the 2025 Phillies?
Yeah, make or break. And then there was one last one I wanted to bring up about damn it. Now I forget what I was going to ask you about. Oh, well.
A series over the weekend?
Had something to do with the weekend. Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Now, is there
anything else even remotely interesting as I'm looking at the scoreboard from yesterday? Twins got on one for a little bit there, right?
Oh yeah, but they lost. They finally lost for the first time. This wasn't it, but I will kind of run it by you. Orioles fire Brandon Hyde, their manager.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Is it really his fault? Like, it's Mike Elias, right?
Yeah. What a mess of a job that guy did. I mean, it was not. You know how we felt about the Orioles the last couple of years, and look at all these young players coming up positionally. And I know they've run into some injuries as well with the pitching, but the whole thing, what a nightmare. I mean, they get swept by the Nationals, who are now, I think, 21-27. And again, kind of, they're not as bad as everyone thinks they are.
Right.
But the Orioles 15-30. And it's interesting that you bring this up because people start talking about, well, they obviously need starting pitchers. Let's talk about Mick Abel to the Orioles. Let's talk about Ranger Suarez to the Orioles. Maybe Abel because he's under control long term, but like Ranger Suarez, the Orioles season is reaching a point where one starter is on an expiring deal. That would be the last guy the Orioles should try to acquire.
Yeah. So how much are they selling at the deadline?
I don't know. I mean, the problem is that a lot of their guys you'd be selling low on. I mean,
right.
What's amazing is like we talk about Phillies not living up to their expectations here, but like a guy like Adley Rutschman, what the hell happened to Adley Rutschman? He was horrible the second half of last season, and he's not been great this year. 209. He's hitting 209 with a 301 on base percentage. This is supposed to be an impact bat. You know, I'm not saying they would trade Adley Rutschman,
no.
But the point being that they have a number of underachievers, and they'd be selling so far below what these players probably are and should be that I think you'd be reluctant to do it. I mean, I just don't even know. Like, I think that they might trade a guy like Eflin. I could see Eflin being traded out of there. They're 15-30. Like, I just don't think that they can get up off the mat, man.
You think they trade Felix Bautista?
Maybe. But, man, that would be pricey.
That would help the Phillies.
You do Abel for Bautista? 1-for-1? Would you do that deal?
No, I don't think so.
You would not do that deal?
I don't think so because relief pitchers to me are too volatile.
Okay. Coming off of a missed season.
Yeah.
And his deal is what? He is arbitration eligible in both 26 and 27. Man, I know, I hear you on the volatility part, but he's not going to be cheap. I don't know that the Orioles would do it for Abel.
It's an interesting name, I think. Just keep an eye on with them because they haven't moved anybody. They need young starting pitching.
I just don't know what their plan is. I don't understand what their plan is.
Nor do I.
Kyle Gibson, Charlie Morton.
Yeah, Brandon Hyde though didn't deserve that.
No,
that was wrong, man. That's all on upstairs, man.
Probably better off firing him at the end of last year after they went out in the playoffs with a thought again and they couldn't score. I'd almost say, "Wow, the Orioles aren't messing around." Then you fire him after that.
I'm going to predict the sweep this week for the Phils against the Rockies. I'm going to go that far and say they're going to win all 4 against the Rockies. That's my prediction. But I will say this. We'll wrap it with this. By tomorrow morning, the Phillies could have the best record in the National League.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Does that surprise you, considering where we were less than a month ago? Because it was April 21st when they lost 5 in a row. And by May 20th, they could have the best record in the National League.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when you do these podcasts and you make these observations and you talk about the things that concern you and all of that, usually we'll always stop short of this team's screwed, or we throw the 55 disclaimers about it is early. You can't decide a season after 17 games. Like, that's why we do it, because every year this happens. So yes, I'm not surprised, but to your point, like, it's been a pretty quick turnaround too.
Yeah. I mean, they were 5.5 out.
So do you believe? I guess you don't, because you think the Braves are going to win the East. I was going to say, so in this moment, do you think the Phillies are the best team in the National League?
No, I don't. I still think the Dodgers are probably the best team in the National League.
You think the Phillies are 2 right now? Like, if the playoffs started today, you'd go Dodgers, Phillies.
Yeah, but I'm sticking with my with.
Yeah,
my
you
Braves
like the Braves.
I think that team is coming, man. I really do, and they've done what they've done without Strider and Acuna.
Yeah.
You're adding 2 all-star caliber players to
Yeah.
what they've been doing already. Like that. That's the thing that should scare everybody the most. I think the Braves are the team that's coming.
Yeah.
So, but right now, as of right now, yeah, I think the Phillies are the second best team behind the Dodgers. So,
all right, get us out of here.
Yep, time to wrap it all up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to yet another episode of Phightin Words. Don't forget that you can subscribe to Phightin Words, both or anywhere you listen to your podcast, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, anywhere you get it. But really, we love for you to subscribe to it right here on YouTube. That's right. You can ring the bell, hit the thumbs up. You'll get an alert every time that we go live, and you'll be able to watch the show. And if you're listening in the podcast feed, check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@Phightin Words. Bob and I will be back on Friday to break down this Rocky series and look ahead to the Athletics, No City Athletics, the Vagabond Athletics playing in Sacramento this year. We'll talk about that series. And maybe on Friday, we'll be able to let you know that we might have a special guest coming up next week at some point to join us on Phightin Words.
Please let me know as soon as possible off air so I can be nice about this player and all of my social media interactions this week.
Oh, now you've just let the cat out of the bag that it's a player.
or whatever, whoever it is.
That's all good, but I will certainly let you know. But
Kevin Long, you've been the best of all. Everyone loves Kevin Long. Hey.
Yeah, but I think next homestand we'll have a guest on Phightin Words. So stay tuned to that. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying thanks for tuning in to Phightin Words. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you on Friday.